Welcome to Skedline. I'm Evan Gravel, and we have a special recap episode of Skedline today, looking back at our work over the semester. But first, here's what's going on in sports. The FIFA World Cup kicked off on Sunday, and the group stage has already brought excitement and upsets. Chief among those upsets was Argentina's loss to Saudi Arabia. The match was the largest upset in 20 years at the FIFA World Cup, with Lionel Messi and Argentina coming in as favorites to win the tournament. Canada fell 1-0 to Belgium in their first match after they were unable to score on 22 opportunities. The most promising was a penalty kick by Alphonso Davies, which was stopped by Belgian keeper Thibaut Courtois. Coach John Herdman was asked about what he told his team after the match and said this.
I'm not Iranian, I'm not Muslim, I'm a Lebanese Canadian woman who grew up in a Christian household, but I'm a woman and I'm a human, and other women and other humans are being silenced, and for some reason...
There are 4 games tomorrow, and Canada's next game is on Sunday against Croatia. Now to weather, news, and after, a special Skedline interview segment. Canada has issued a fog advisory for the city of Toronto. There's nearly zero visibility this morning in the dense fog, but it is expected to dissipate throughout the day. Drivers are warned to be cautious on the road, slow down, and watch for taillights ahead of them. The fog has delayed buses around the city, as well as flights departing from Toronto Pearson Airport. Now here is Megan interviewing Maya about travel for students.
Thanks, Evan. Hi, Maya. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, Maya, tell us about your story and the inspiration for it.
So my story is about affordable options for travel for students, specifically about a staycation in Toronto. I just wanted to provide some options for students who wanted to do a travel or who wanted a vacation, and something that was budget friendly for them because so many students don't feel travel is accessible to them.
For sure. In your opinion, what is the best travel option for students?
For students, definitely something budget friendly. So I would recommend something that doesn't require a flight. So something within Ontario. If they don't necessarily want to stay in Toronto, I would say somewhere like Niagara Falls or somewhere like even Mississauga. There's a lot of shopping options there. So just something that is more accessible to them without having to fly. I think that's like the most budget friendly option for students.
That's great. Thanks so much, Maya. Now back to Evan with a CUPE update.
Thanks, Megan. Over 50,000 education workers will be voting today on whether or not they accept a new deal from the union and government. The new deal consists of a $1 per hour raise every year. Laura Walton, president of Ontario's CUPE Ontario School Board Council, said she doesn't personally approve of the deal because it does not offer new level staffing guarantees. CUPE employees will be voting today until December 6th. Now, here's Ishmeet interviewing Kartik about his coverage of the Need or Greed protest.
Thanks, Evan. Hello, Kartik. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me here.
So, talking about your story, how did it feel to cover such a topic close to you as an international student yourself?
To be honest, that protest was very amazing. I've never been to Queen's Park personally, but to cover that protest, I went there. There were so many students from all over the Ontario colleges, and they were asking for one thing only, which was tuition fees on. They were asking only for tuition fees, which is very important, especially in these times when inflation is sky high.
Right.
We, as an international student, need something from the government to help us out as well.
Mm-hmm. Interesting point that you bring. And why do you feel that it is important for anyone to know about this protest that you covered?
I believe that this topic and this protest is important for everyone, not even international students. It is going to affect domestic students as well, because when tuition fees happen, it only happened for domestic students. Mm-hmm. And us as an international student, we bring a lot on to the Canadian economy and Canadian government. Right. We were not given any subsidies or any grants in those times. So if in those tough times, in pandemic times, government can do that to us, they might in the future do that to domestic students as well and abuse them as well. Mm-hmm. So I think this topic is very important to all of us, and as students we need to get together and protest about this a lot.
Interesting. Thank you. Thanks, Kartik. Now to even with a protest involving Mahsa Amini.
The death of Mahsa Amini created a commotion around the world and several protests in support of Iranian women's rights. Following the uprising, a group of Iranian feminists created an organization called Feminists for Jinnah to advocate against the Islamic regime's systematic discriminations. They are now organizing protests in different countries for the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. The Toronto protest will take place at Queen's Park on Saturday, November 26th at 2 p.m. Now let's go to Megan and Maria.
Thanks, Evan. Hi, Maria. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Megan.
So, Maria, your story was about the power of art after the death of Mahsa Amini. Who has your story affected?
I think it mostly affected the artists themselves because they were sharing their art in social media and just like Instagram, TikTok, but they were sharing just for their families and friends. And this article actually gave them the opportunity to put their opinions also out there to just like talk about it. I had an interview with Joel, who is the artist of this piece, and it was amazing what she said. Like she was so emotional. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Maria. Now let's go to Ishmi and Talia with another art story.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks for being here, Thalia. So, Thalia, tell us about your story and how is AI important in the art world?
So my story is about how artists perceive AI art, and I also interviewed like an AI artist as well and some digital artists from Humber. And AI art is important because it shows like how us as a society is working towards the digitalization of everything. So there's that.
Interesting. And what was a key takeaway for you while writing the story?
My key takeaway from writing the story is probably how I still find AI art unethical because I still find it unfair how these AI artists can like make art out of someone else's hard work. So it's a thin line between it's okay and it's not okay. So there's that.
Interesting point you bring to the table, Thalia. Thanks, Thalia. Now to Evan with the climate action update.
Thanks, Ishmeet. Environment and Climate Change Canada unveiled a new climate adaptation strategy that commits the federal government to set targets that reverse impacts of climate change. The strategy aims to prevent extreme heat deaths, reverse species loss, and protecting homes in flood and wildfire-prone areas across the country. The federal government has also dedicated $1.6 billion in funding over 5 years towards improving the disaster response strategy and protecting Canadians from heat and health effects. The funding will also contribute to the existing Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund. The strategy does not contain hard targets for Canada, but will act as a starting point for a more detailed strategy later on. The announcement was made in Prince Edward Island, a province that has experienced mass destruction from Hurricane Fiona last September. Next up, Megan interviews Veronica about her Patagonia story.
Veronica, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, Veronica, what did you learn after writing about Patagonia and the impacts of fashion on the environment?
To be honest, Patagonia wasn't a brand that I was always shopping with. It's on the pricier side, but after learning what Yvonne Chouinard did with the company, I fell in love with it and was just amazed with everything that they decided to do when it comes down to climate change. How often do you see businesses drop it all off for the sake of the environment, for the sake of a greater mission? Not very often. So I thought that was incredible. And in terms of the impacts on climate change, the numbers are there and the numbers are very real. I didn't you know that the clothing industry and the fast fashion industry has such a big impact on our environment, but we never really know the numbers. And when I saw that there were tons of microplastics or unrecyclable fibers in the water, for example, like that was an amazing number and a scary number considering the state that our world is in. So definitely just seeing all of the stats and seeing how that can apply to our lives and how we should be looking at the impacts of our shopping habits on the environment, I thought that was really important too. And as someone who has had pretty unsustainable shopping habits before and in the past, seeing what Patagonia did and writing this story really put things into perspective for me, especially with this holiday season coming up with Black Friday and Boxing Day and all of these brands sort of pushing this message to spend more money, spend on cave into your unsustainable shopping habits. I think that this story reigns really important and has a very solidifying message about where the clothing industry stands when it comes to climate change.
For sure. Thanks so much, Veronica.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully we can all reflect on our shopping habits for the upcoming
Hi,
holidays.
Kendra. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, the big question is, why is it important to become food conscious during the holidays?
Well, during the holidays, many people tend to gather, and at these parties, it's usually big potlucks, so a lot of food tends to be put onto the table, and at the time, people really don't realize how much food is going into these parties. So being food conscious and knowing how many people are showing up and how much food is there will really help you save on grocery bills and just overall the environment.
For sure. And the recipe that you showed us, tell us where did this recipe come from?
Well, after Canadian Thanksgiving, I had some leftovers, so I decided to make some potato pancakes. And overall, they weren't bad, but if you're someone who likes very savory things, this is definitely a recipe for you. But if you're more into the sweet things, then don't expect this recipe to be sweet because they're not sweet pancakes.
Thanks for that advice, Kendra. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, back to Evan.
Christmas tree farms are facing a shortage of supply and prices are rising. Tree growers across Ontario say that the demand for trees is outgrowing the supply once again this year. The high demand for trees this year will bump the price by 10% or more. This Christmas tree farm crisis can be led back to the 2008 financial crisis when tree farms did not expand to keep up with demand. The executive director of the Christmas Tree Association, Shirley Brennan, says that in 2008, farmers might not have expanded their farms because of the economy. Brennan says that it takes at least 8 to 12 years for a seedling to reach market. Many tree farmers are predicting they will need to close their farms early due to a rise in prices and a shortage of inventory. That's all for today. Thanks for watching and tuning in over the past few months. It's been a pleasure giving you your news. Have a great holiday.